Okay, I'm going to get started this morning by welcoming all of you guys. Welcome to Wat Tung. Welcome to everyone online who's joining us as well. Today is our Pali Canon and English study group, which I'll explain to you guys what that is after we get started. We're going to start with meditation, and then after that move into the Pali Canon and English study group, which I'll explain to you guys after meditation. The way that we do our meditation is we start with chanting to ease the mind into meditation. If you guys would like to see the chants, they're on a laminated sheet over there on the table. You're welcome to get the chants if you like. These chants are in the Pali language because this is the historical language of the teachings of the Buddha, and we chant these in order to ease our mind into meditation and actually get more benefit out of the meditation itself because it helps to promote mindfulness and concentration. During the lifetime of the Buddha, they used chanting as a way to commit the teachings to memory. So every 2 weeks, his students would come together and they would recite his teachings word for word for word as a way to commit them to memory, because the technology to write things down didn't exist in that region of the world. So nowadays we have books, videos, podcasts, audiobooks, all these things to be able to capture the teachings. But during that time, everything that was being taught was oral. So they used chanting as a way to commit the teachings to memory. But nowadays we don't need to use chanting as a way to commit the teachings to memory because we have all these other resources and ways to capture the teachings. If you read the English translations here, you'll see that the chants have a lot of respect and appreciation and gratitude for the Buddha. And because of that, I think that his students probably created these chants either during his life or after his death, because a Buddha would have eliminated their ego, their boastfulness, their arrogance. They wouldn't have walked around, saying, "Here, students, chant these chants to me." The Buddha wouldn't have done that. But if you learn from a teacher how to move from anger and sadness and frustration and all these other discontent feelings to the peace and the joy that is the enlightened mind, you'd probably have a lot of respect and gratitude for that teacher too. So I think that his students probably created these due to the amount of respect and gratitude that they had for him to be able to help them to move from this anger and sadness and frustration and all these other discontent feelings to the peace and joy that is the enlightened mind. So I use these chants to ease us into meditation, and you're welcome to chant along if you like. After the chanting, we'll be in meditation, and I'll just be guiding you for a period of time. Then there's going to be a period of time after the guidance where it's just quiet and we're just all meditating together. Then we'll come out of the meditation with some more chanting. The positions that the Buddha taught in order to help you to meditate are 4 different positions. They're seated, lying, standing, and walking. And you can use any of these positions in various courses and retreats that I teach. I teach people all these different positions. So you're welcome to use whatever position you like, but oftentimes people are learning in the seated position. So I'll give you a little bit of guidance on the seated position. Oftentimes people are either on the floor, in a chair. If you're at home, you might be on a sofa or a couch or a bench or a wheelchair or something like this. If you're on the floor, you might have a cushion under your ear just to kind of soften the seat a little bit. And then you'd like your legs to just be lightly crossed. Whereas if they're real tight, it can impede the circulation and it can cause pain in the body. Some people like to put their legs off the mat because it's not about everybody doing it exactly the same way. It's about finding what's comfortable for you. So some people like to put their legs off the mat. This gets the hips up in the air and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles. So if that's comfortable for you, you could use that as well. If you would like to do your hands the way the Buddha did them, the Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together and he put this into his lap. You could use this if you like, but there's other options here as well. Some people like to put their palms on their thighs or their knees. Some people put their palms up. Some people rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So you can just find whatever's comfortable for you with the lower body and the hands and arms. So the upper body, this should be erect. By having the sternum up and the shoulders back, it keeps the mind attentive and alert during the meditation. Whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you were real rigid, the mind would be overactive or uptight. So you'd like the upper body to be in the middle with the sternum up and the shoulders back, which will keep your mind attentive and alert during the meditation. It'll also make it easy for you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. So again, I'm going to ease us into meditation with chanting, which you guys are welcome to join along in. And then I'm going to come back in with some guidance to help you in meditation. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakeva Bhutang Mahakavanang ภิวาเตมิสวากขาโตมหาควตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาควโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาควาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมโมโนสัคขะโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังปุตโตภะคะวะติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled. Just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Hotang Mahakavanang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakawa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vichacharanang Sammuno Sakato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Panusarang Poto Bhagavate. Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Okay, once again, welcome to all of you guys. Nice to see all of you guys here this morning. Welcome to everyone online as well. As I mentioned, today is our Pali Canon and English study group, which is a program that I teach each Sunday at 9 a.m. here at the temple, and then I live stream it out through live stream and Zoom and other places like that. And then I also teach it at 9 p.m. at home, and I live stream it from there as well. What we do here is we study the original words of the Buddha in this Pali Canon and English study group, where other programs that I teach, it's more of a foundational program where it's more of a traditional style of learning, where I'll be teaching for 15, 20, 30 minutes and then opening up for questions, teach for another 15, 20, 30 minutes, open up for questions. I do this on Sundays and Wednesdays. This is part of our group learning program, which takes this first book, and each Sunday I go chapter by chapter. This is a text that helps you to build a foundation in the path to enlightenment, to understand how to move your mind to this mental state where the mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy, where you no longer experience any discontent feelings. By the time you get to enlightenment, you've eliminated all the anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All of these feelings and others are eliminated from the mind. You don't even have the slightest displeasure in the enlightened mind. The mind is focused, concentrated. You have clarity of mind and deep memory. And your personal and professional relationships are really blossoming. You're not having difficulties and struggles in your personal and professional relationships any longer. You'll notice that you're not even in a bad mood because you've uprooted the causes and conditions that produce the bad mood. So the teachings of the Buddha, it's about training your mind. It's not about a bunch of beliefs that you believe a bunch of things and then you hope something good happens when you die. It's also not about rules or commandments, things that you are being forced or trying to people convincing you to actually follow. Instead, you're cultivating your mind through acquiring wisdom, through learning teachings, examining them and investigating them, through reflecting on them to independently verify them, and then practicing them. And that's what today's class is about, as well as all the others, where the foundational programs, I'm walking you guys through to build a foundation. And we use this first book as a way to guide our program. In this program of the Pali Canon and English Study Group, we study volumes 2 through 13 of this book series that I share. This book series is available for you at no cost. You can download it for free from our website. You can take it and go print it if you like. You can get printed versions here at the temple by just reimbursing us for the printing cost, or you can acquire it on Amazon if you have access to Amazon. What we're doing today is we're in this third volume of the book series. This third volume is titled The Foundation of the Teachings, and I've just restarted this program in July. And what we do is we go chapter by chapter in this program, and here you can see this first chapter is only about a page, essentially. What we're going to be doing is working our way through these chapters so that you can learn the chapters and you can get guidance on them from a teacher. Oftentimes, students come into this type of program after they've already learned the foundational teachings, and then they come into this program in order to further flesh out this framework of understanding of the teachings of the Buddha. If you're interested in learning the foundational program, that's tomorrow on Sundays and Wednesdays, and we're actually getting ready to restart it. Next Sunday, October 20th, I'm going to be restarting it from the very beginning. And I've done this program about 7 or 8 times now, where I go through over a 7-month period this first book and walking you guys through. So whether you're here at the temple or whether you're online, you can actually join the classes, and you can join live if you like, or if you can't attend live, there's recordings because it's captured on YouTube, Facebook, on our podcast, and you're able to watch the recording if you can't attend actually live. So this program is to help students to further flesh out their understanding of the path to enlightenment. And if this is the first time you've ever learned here, it's okay because you'll still learn something today. So even though students will oftentimes take a foundational program and then move into this program, the students who come here for the first time on a day like today, you'll still be able to learn things about the teachings of the Buddha. And that's why I shared with you that the way that the teachings of the Buddha work is you're learning them, you're examining them, you're investigating them, you're reflecting on them to independently verify whether they're true or they're false. And then you're practicing his teachings, integrating them into your day-to-day life. And this is what's training your mind to uproot certain pollutions that the Buddha discovered in the mind. And when you uproot these causes and conditions, these pollutions that are in the mind, this is where you see the peace and the joy starting to come into the mind more readily. Because as long as the mind is polluted with these pollutions that the Buddha discovered, you'll lack focus, concentration, memory. You won't have clarity of mind. You'll have difficulties in your relationships, both personally and professionally. You'll have these struggles and difficulties, but you can get free of all of that through learning and training your mind, and you can experience improvements to the condition of your mind and your life as well. So the way that we do this program is I ask for volunteers, either here at the temple or those of you guys in Zoom. You can volunteer to read one of these chapters. And then after somebody reads the chapter, I will take a few minutes to teach a little bit about that chapter, and then I'll open up to any and all questions that you guys might have related to the chapter. If you're here at the temple and you would like to read or you would like to ask questions, if you could use the microphones here in the white bowl, this way the people online will be able to hear you, and we'll be able to hear you here as well. If you spoke without this microphone, the people online wouldn't be able to hear you. So you can get a microphone and press the gray button. You're going to see the lights come on, and you can just hold it up to your chin, and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple. They'll be able to hear you online as well. And then you can just keep the microphone with with you, because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have a question, and you can kind of share the microphones around. And then for those of you guys in Zoom, if you would like to volunteer to read, you can electronically raise your hand and then unmute your microphone, and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you through the live stream. And if anybody would like to ask questions, if you're online, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comments section. I'll be able to see that. And then those of you guys here at the temple, you can use the microphones. And then on Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand for questions and unmute your microphone, and we'll be able to take your questions that way. So is there someone who would like to volunteer to read this first chapter, either here at the temple or online? Pat? Okay, sure. Go ahead, sir.
Chapter 71, Craving and Anger Does Not Exist. Monks, there are these four things that are born. What for? Craving is born from craving, anger is born from craving is born from anger, and anger is born from anger. When, distant from sense desires, distant from unwholesome mental states, enters and resides in the first jhana, which is with thinking and pondering, based in seclusion, filled with excitement and joy, on that occasion, craving, born from craving, does not exist in him. Anger born from craving does not exist in him. Craving born from anger does not exist in him, and anger born from anger does not exist in him. When, with the subsiding of thinking and pondering, by gaining inner tranquility and oneness of mind, he enters and resides in the second jhana, which is without thinking and pondering, based in concentration, filled with excitement and joy, the third jhana. The fourth jhana, on that occasion, craving born from craving does not exist in him. Anger born from craving does not exist in him. Craving born from anger does not exist in him. And anger born from anger does not exist in him.
Okay, thank you, Pat. So what the Buddha is referring to here is something called the jhanas. What the jhanas are, these are preliminary phases that the mind goes through before you get to the first stage of enlightenment. There's 4 stages that the mind goes through before you actually experience enlightenment. And this is accomplished through training the mind. It's when the mind is in the 4th stage that the mind is actually enlightened. And from that point, you won't experience any more discontent feelings. All that anger, sadness, and frustration, and stress and anxiety and all of that stuff is all eliminated from the mind. But in order to get to even the first stage of enlightenment, your mind needs to move through what's called the jhanas. These are preliminary phases that the mind experiences on its way to this first stage of enlightenment. By the time you've gotten to the first jhana, you've mentally absorbed a certain amount of the teachings, and you've absorbed a certain amount of meditation at that point. There's a core central teaching that the Buddha teaches. It's called the Eightfold Path. This is what's going to guide you into the jhanas, where you start experiencing these heightened qualities of mind. That's what you experience in these jhanas, and that's what the Buddha's kind of pointing to here when he's talking about these heightened qualities that you'll experience when your mind is in the jhanas. So when you're learning the foundational teachings, you're learning the Eightfold Path. It's right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. There are certain teachings behind this that you need to learn, you need to reflect on, to independently verify and practice. And as you're training your mind through this Eightfold Path, that's what's going to produce the jhanas, where your mind now is moving through these preliminary phases where you see these heightened qualities of mind. And the Buddha is pointing to that here, because by the time someone gets to the first jhana, what he's saying is these 4 things don't exist in the mind any longer. And there's other qualities that you experience when your mind is in the jhanas as well. But the ones that he's talking about here is that once your mind gets into the first jhana, on that occasion, craving born from craving does not exist in him. What craving, desire, attachment is, this is the longing, the yearning, the wanting, the expecting. This is what's actually causing the mind to be discontent. That when you experience anger and sadness and stress and anxiety or guilt or shame or fear, or any of these other emotions, oftentimes we think that something external is causing that. You might actually blame it on other people. You might think somebody else is annoying you, but in reality, it's your own mind that's causing this. The teachings of the Buddha on the Four Noble Truths will help you to understand that. He explains it to you in a way that you can independently verify and see for yourself. That when you get what you want, when your mind is longing, yearning, and you get what you want, you get happy. But when you don't get what you want, you get sad or angry or frustrated or some other discontent feeling. This is the mind causing these feelings itself. And you can independently verify this because you can look at the last time you were angry or sad or frustrated or some other discontent feeling, and you can see that there was something your mind didn't get. That if you would have got it, you would have been happy. But since you didn't get what you wanted, you got angry or sad or frustrated or some other feeling. So what you're doing on this path to enlightenment is you're working to eliminate craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, this unquenchable thirst where your mind is chasing after the objects of your affection. Because this is what's causing the mind to experience discontentedness. And it's the Eightfold Path, this core central teaching of the Buddha, that's going to guide you in how to accomplish the elimination of craving, desire, attachment. And by the time you put together that Eightfold Path, you've absorbed the teachings and practicing them close enough that by the time you get to the first jhana, you don't have craving born from craving. What craving born from craving is that when you have one particular craving and it leads to another craving. So say, for example, I really want a brand new car. I really am longing, yearning. I want this brand new car really badly. And I just think that this brand new car is going to make my life so much better. And I'm longing, yearning, and chasing after it. Well, because of that craving, there's more cravings that come from that. Now maybe I start craving money. And I want a lot of money. And now I start chasing money. So this is craving born from craving. But by the time you get to the jhanas, you still have craving, desire, attachment in your mind, but you're not going to have cravings stacked on top of each other, is what the Buddha is describing here. You're still going to have cravings. You're still going to have discontentedness in the jhanas, but you're not going to have craving stacked on top of craving. Then the next thing he's saying here is that you won't have anger born from craving. What this is that when you have craving, desire, attachment, and you get what you want, you get happy, you get excited, you get elated because you got what you wanted. But the world is impermanent. You're not going to always get what you want. So that means in some situations, you're not going to get what you want. And when you don't get what you want, you get angry, right? You get bitter and hostile and harsh maybe. So by the time you get to the jhanas, you're not going to have that extreme anger. You're not going to have that. You'll still get frustrated. You'll still get agitated when you're in the jhanas because your mind's not yet enlightened. But you're not going to have that anger is what the Buddha is talking about, that extreme. Your discontentedness has been diminished to a certain degree. Then he's saying that you won't have craving born from anger. So what this is if you don't have anger, of course, you're not going to have craving born from anger because there's no anger there. But I'll explain to you guys what this is. Say something happens to you and you get really angry, right? Let's just say your mom does something and you perceive it that mom's doing something and now mom's making you angry and you experience this anger. Where now when you have this anger that mom is doing something a certain way, you might crave for mom to do one thing or another. Because of your anger, you think the way to solve this problem is to try to force mom to do things a certain way. So you're not going to have this. You will understand by this point, you will have enough wisdom to realize that that anger that we're experiencing, it's coming from your own mind. And it would be unwise to try to solve your anger with another craving. That's oftentimes what the mind does, is when you feel those painful feelings of anger, you feel like the way to solve this problem is to maybe try to put your expectations on someone or try to force them to to do things the way that you want them to do it. So by the time you get to the jhanas, you will have seen the truth that that's not going to solve the problem. Then the Buddha says, by the time you get to the first jhana, you won't have anger born from anger, right? Because the anger is all gone, but you can have anger born from anger. I've given actually examples of all of these down here because what you have is you have the words of the Buddha, you have the reference back to the original Pali Canon, so you can see the original words of the Buddha, which is what I have here. But then I have examples of each one of these so that you can see what each one of these are. And you can see here that what I share is anger born from anger is if an individual has anger, that can arise further anger in the mind when one does not acquire the objects of their affection. And then here's the example that I give. If a practitioner has anger because they were not able to acquire wealth, This could then arise further anger when increased promotions in one's career, increased money, lavish lifestyle, and luxury cars, clothing, jewelry, property are not acquired, because now the mind's angry, right? The mind is having this anger because they haven't been able to acquire wealth. I haven't been able to get wealth, so the mind is angry. But now when you're not able to get promotions, we're not able to get jewelry, we're not able to get this lavish lifestyle, you get even more angry because of that. So what the Buddha is sharing with you here is, by the time you've practiced the Eightfold Path enough that your mind is now in the first jhana, the second jhana, the third jhana, the fourth jhana, these preliminary phases, you won't be experiencing these things. You still will have discontentedness in those jhanas, but it won't be this heightened discontentedness the way that the Buddha is talking about here. So do you guys have any questions on that, either here or online? Let me see if we have any questions online here. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. Okay, so now let's move to the next chapter, which is chapter 72. Looks like Roxanne is volunteering to read this one. So go ahead, ma'am. You're welcome to volunteer and read this one. Are you reading, Roxanne?
Calm and reflection have part in true wisdom. Monks, these two qualities have part in true wisdom. What two? Calm and reflection. If cultivated, what profit does calm attain? The mind is cultivated. What profit results from a cultivated mind? All craving is abandoned. Monks, if reflection is cultivated, what profit does it attain? Wisdom is cultivated. If wisdom is cultivated, what profit does it attain? All ignorance is abandoned. A mind defiled by craving is not liberated. The wisdom defiled by ignorance, unknowing of true reality, is not developed. Thus, monks, through the fading away of craving, there is liberation of mind, and through the fading away of ignorance, unknowing of true reality, there is liberation by wisdom.
Okay, thank you, Roxanne. I really like this discourse, as I do all the teachings of the Buddha, but this one is very straightforward and very clear, just like all of his teachings, very clear and very straightforward. But this is honing in on two really important aspects of your journey to enlightenment. Is you're working to eliminate craving, the longing, yearning, the chasing after the objects of your affection. You're also working to eliminate the anger, the hatred, the ill will. And the way that you're doing this is you're working on eliminating what's called ignorance, or the unknowing of true reality, the lack of wisdom. So you're transforming the mind on this journey to enlightenment, where you're cultivating the mind to have generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. And the Buddha is giving you, in a very concise way, exactly how to accomplish this. And there's been other chapters that he shares even more details, but this is kind of at a high level that he's talking about here. He's saying basically these two qualities have part in true wisdom. Essentially, this is what's going to help you to get to wisdom. And he says those two qualities are calm and reflection. That if your mind's calm, tranquil, and peaceful, and you're doing reflection, where you're looking inward and trying to figure out and understand the mind, this is what's going to help you to get to wisdom. Because if your mind was like uncalm, if it was shaken up, if you were unsteady and uncalm, you're not going to be able to get to wisdom. And if you're not doing reflection, if you could care less about what's going on in your life and you're not looking inward to develop the mind, you're never going to be able to get to wisdom. Wisdom is what's going to help you in your life. That when you cultivate wisdom, you know the truth. You know what's true and you know what's false, and you can make wise decisions in the world in order to move your life forward and progress in life. So when you maintain your calmness and composure of your mind, when you have equanimity, this is going to lead to wisdom. And the same thing is true when you do reflection. When you look inward and you try to figure out, what are the wise things that I'm doing that are leading to wholesome results? What are the unwise things that I'm doing that are leading to unwholesome results? This reflection is going to help lead you to wisdom, to ultimately move your life forward. So here the Buddha says, okay, well, if cultivated, what is the benefit essentially, or what is the profit of maintaining calmness in the mind? Well, the mind is cultivated, right? Because your mind is calm, you can cultivate the mind. You can develop the mind. That's what the word cultivation means, is development of the mind. And then what profit results from the cultivated mind? Like if you're developing your mind and you're cultivating your mind, what's the benefit of that? Well, you can abandon all craving. The craving, desire, attachment is what's causing the mind to experience anger and sadness and frustration. So by keeping the mind calm, you can cultivate the mind. And by cultivating the mind, you can actually work to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. And the Buddha gives you the guidance of how to do that in his other teachings. And then he's saying, okay, what if a person has reflection? If reflection is cultivated, what is the benefit attained essentially? That's what he's describing. Well, if you do reflection, if you look inward and you kind of cultivate reflection and you work on looking inward about what are the wise and unwise things that you're doing and what's leading to wholesome and unwholesome results in your life, this results in wisdom. Because now you have the wisdom to know what is wise and what is unwise. Well, if wisdom is cultivated, what is the benefit of that? Well, all ignorance or unknowing of true reality is cultivated and abandoned. All ignorance is abandoned, because it's the lack of wisdom that one keeps struggling in the world over and over again. When you're experiencing stress and anxiety, when you're frustrated and agitated or annoyed, when you're experiencing guilt and shame or fear, this is because the mind lacks wisdom about the natural laws. That's what the Buddha is teaching you, is about the natural laws of existence. He's teaching you about how your mind works. He's teaching you about how the world works. And now through that wisdom, you won't struggle and have difficulties anymore. When you're in life and you're having struggles and difficulties, there's certain wisdom that you don't understand. You're living in a world that you don't understand. That's why you're struggling and having difficulties. That's why you're stressed and having anxiety. But it's the cultivation of wisdom, thus the abandoning of ignorance, that is going to lead to your peace and to your joy. As long as you don't cultivate wisdom through learning, reflecting, and practicing, you're not going to be able to actually get to wisdom, and you're going to keep experiencing the anger and the stress and the anxiety over and over and over again. So by abandoning ignorance, that's what's going to lead to your enlightenment. So now the Buddha goes into more details about that. He says, a mind defiled by craving is not eliminated. Is not liberated. Defiled is polluted. So a mind polluted with this craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, is not liberated. Liberation is freedom of the mind, where your mind's free of these strong feelings. So as long as you have craving, your mind is not free. You're going to keep experiencing anger and sadness and frustration over and over and over again. And wisdom defiled by ignorance or unknowing of true reality is not developed. So wisdom that is polluted with this ignorance or unknowing of true reality, your mind's not developed. So there are certain things that you have wisdom about in the world that you know about, but there are certain things that you don't know. That's the ignorance. So that ignorance is polluting whatever wisdom that you currently have. By the time you get to enlightenment, you have full wisdom. You've acquired what's called final knowledge, that your mind is fully developed, and you're practicing what's called right wisdom, where your mind is fully developed, understanding the natural laws of existence. Your mind's not struggling or having any difficulties in life anymore, that your relationships are all at ease. So any kind of pollution of your wisdom with this ignorance is not keeping you trapped. You can't get to liberation. You can't get to the peace and joy, because the mind is polluted with a certain amount of unknowing of true reality. Thus, monks, through the fading away of craving, so through eliminating craving, desire, attachment, there is liberation of mind. The mind's free of these strong feelings when you eliminate craving, desire, attachment. And through the fading away of ignorance or the unknowing of true reality, then there is liberation by wisdom. So it's through cultivating wisdom that the mind actually gets to this freedom of these strong feelings. It's through the cultivation of wisdom that your mind gets to enlightenment. It's not through belief. You can't believe your way to enlightenment. You need to cultivate wisdom through learning, reflecting, to independently verify, and practice. And the Buddha is teaching you that keeping your mind calm allows you to be able to do that. And then doing this reflection to look inward helps you to cultivate wisdom. So any questions on this chapter, either here at the temple or online? Okay, it looks like we have a question on Facebook here. Janae is asking, is thinking and pondering the same as reflection? Yes, it's very similar. When the Buddha's talking about thinking and pondering in that first jhana, and he talks about it in the second jhana too, what he's talking about here is he's talking about, before you learn these teachings, we're just kind of like going through life haphazardly, not really paying attention to what it is that we're doing. And we just think that we're all right because the ego's in there telling you that you're right, everybody else is wrong, right? When you get angry, when you get sad and you get frustrated, you might look for somebody else to blame, right? Because in the unenlightened mind, with its lack of wisdom, it thinks that everybody else is causing you to be angry, right? Because in the unenlightened state with the ego, we think that we're perfect, right? You're perfect. Everybody else is the one who's causing you to be angry. That's what the mind thinks in the unenlightened state. But when you cultivate wisdom, you can see that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. So when you're off the path to enlightenment, we're just haphazardly going through life, kind of knocking down the trees, burning up the forest. But when you start getting on the path to enlightenment and you learn the Eightfold Path, and you start learning the natural laws that the Buddha taught, more and more you start doing what's called thinking and pondering. That when you meet with any particular situation, where in the past you might have just blown through that and could care less, and you just make decisions based on your own self-interest, now what you start doing is you start thinking and pondering. You start thinking about this situation and how can I handle it through the teachings of the Buddha. So say your landlord comes to you and says like, hey, you haven't paid your rent, and you know that you've paid your rent, where in the past you might have gotten angry and bitter and hostile and harsh and start yelling and screaming at them and, what are you talking about? I paid my rent. Like that might have been what you did off the path to enlightenment. But now when you're on the path to enlightenment, you start thinking and pondering, what's the best way to handle this? They think I didn't pay my rent. I know that I did pay my rent. You know what? Let me step back from this conversation. Let me go look at my bank statement. Let me go pull up the receipt. Let me print it out. Let me take a screenshot of it, and let me politely send it to the landlord so that they can see that I actually paid the rent. And this is the thinking and pondering. You think about things like right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. You start thinking about, how can I now handle this situation in a more wise way? Where in the past we didn't have the wisdom of how to do that. Now on the path to enlightenment, you cultivate the wisdom of how can I handle this situation? And now you handle it better. And you see that, wow, that went so much better. When I was polite and kind and friendly and respectful to my landlord and just gave them the evidence that they needed, wow, there was no more argument, there was no more hostility, and now there's more respect between us. Where in the past, I would have yelled and hollered at them and been upset with them, and that led to difficulties and struggles and more hostility and bitterness. And now you have more wisdom. You see like, wow, the teachings of the Buddha are actually true. Like the more that I'm polite, kind, friendly, respectful in the world, the better my relationships are. And now I can start doing that more and more often in all my relationships, not just with my landlord, but with my mom and dad and my brothers and sisters and everybody else, my coworkers, my boss. When you start functioning this way through the natural laws, using the wisdom of the teachings of the Buddha, doing that thinking and repondering, or in that reflection and looking inward and figuring out what will be wise and unwise, that's what's going to lead to your cultivation of wisdom. And now you just have that wisdom on board. From this point forward, you won't have to, really struggle and have difficulties of figuring out what would be wise to do, because you've done it. And whenever somebody says, hey, you didn't pay this, you'll know the way to solve that. The way to solve it isn't to be bitter and harsh and hostile with them. The way to solve it is just get your receipt, politely show it to them, realize that they've made a mistake, and then you can maintain your relationship, and you can maintain good relationships and harmonious relationships with everyone. And now that wisdom on board, your mind will tend to do these kinds of things more and more and more. Instead of going down this path of anger and hostility and bitterness with this thinking and pondering, and then actually practicing on a regular basis, you start going down this path of generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom more and more. And now your mind will start doing that more and more because you see the benefits in it. So yeah, it's essentially the same thing, Janae. Okay, I don't see any other questions anywhere. So is there someone who would like to read this next chapter? By the way, for those of you guys that English is your additional language, this is a great opportunity to practice your English a little bit, give you a chance to practice a little bit, learn not only the teachings of the Buddha, but a little bit of English as well. Okay, so it looks like Roxanne would like to practice her English. Go ahead, Roxanne.
Yeah. Yes, I'm practicing. One who inclines towards nibbana, enlightenment. Monks, just as the river Ganges slants, slopes, and inclines towards the east, so too a monk who develops and cultivates the four jhanas slants, slopes, and inclines towards nibbana, enlightenment. And how, monks, does a monk develops and cultivates the four jhanas slant, slope, and incline towards nibbana, enlightenment? Here, a monk, distance from sense desires, distance from unwholesome mental states, enters and resides in the first jhana, which is with thinking and pondering, based in seclusion, filled with excitement and joy. And with the subsiding of thinking and pondering by gaining inner tranquility and oneness of mind, he enters and resides in the second jhana, which is without thinking and pondering, based in concentration, filled with excitement and joy. And with the fading away of excitement, remaining unperturbed, unable to be upset or excited, calm and serene, mindful and clearly aware, he experiences in himself the joy of which the Noble One says, "Peaceful is he who resides with equanimity and mindfulness." He enters the third jhana, and having given up pleasure and pain with the fading away of former gladness and sadness, he enters and resides in the fourth jhana, which is beyond pleasure and pain and purified by equanimity and mindfulness. This is in this way, monks, that a monk who develops and cultivates the four jhanas slants, slopes, and inclines towards nibbana, enlightenment.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So what the Buddha is describing here is these four preliminary mental states that I was mentioning to you, the jhanas. Having attained those jhanas, one kind of leans towards enlightenment, because in order to get to those jhanas, you would have needed to put together a fair amount of your practice of the Eightfold Path, that core central teaching of the Buddha, right view through right concentration. There's teachings there that you would learn in any of our foundational courses and programs and retreats, that Eightfold Path, as you're putting that together, your mind moves to these preliminary phases. And the Buddha is describing what you experience in those jhanas. These are the qualities that you experience. And having gotten into those jhanas, your mind is more likely to then move its way to enlightenment. You wouldn't actually be able to even get to the first stage of enlightenment without experiencing the jhanas. So it's putting together the Eightfold Path that is going to allow you to experience the jhanas. And now, having those improved qualities of mind, now you will make your way towards the first, second, third, and fourth stage of enlightenment. These qualities that the Buddha is talking about, I break these down in some of the foundational classes that I teach, and I explain to you guys what each individual jhana is, because here he's explaining it all at one time, and I've kind of broken it out and kind of showing you exactly what each jhana is and how you're experiencing it. But I'll just explain one aspect of it here, because we don't need to go into it in a whole lot of detail unless you guys ask questions. One aspect that you can see here where he talks about this oneness of mind, where he's talking about sometimes he uses the term unification of mind, where he says here that the mind, when it enters into the second jhana, there's this oneness of mind. What he's talking about here is that prior to the second jhana, you have a conscious mind and you have a subconscious mind. Both of these are actually polluted, and the subconscious mind is more polluted than the conscious mind. If you've ever been standing around a bunch of friends and you guys were talking, maybe coworkers or something like that, and you just blurted something out and you were like, why did I say that? I don't think that way. I don't feel that way. Why did I say that? That was really silly of me. I shouldn't have said that. This is your subconscious mind, which is very polluted, and it's throwing things up into your conscious mind, and you might just blurt it out without thinking about it. And now you might have damaged a relationship, or you might have said something that was unwise in that situation. This is because of the two minds, the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. By the time you've trained your mind to the point where you get to this second jhana through practicing the Eightfold Path, you now experience what's called oneness of mind, or unification of the mind, where there's just one mind. There's no longer a conscious and subconscious mind, that the mind has now become one, and you have full awareness of this entire mind. And this is what you're going to need in order to make your way to enlightenment, because what you're doing on your way to enlightenment is you're purifying the mind. You're training the mind to uproot certain pollutions, certain unwholesome qualities that are currently in your mind. You're working to eliminate those. And then there's certain wholesome qualities that you currently have in your mind that you're looking to support and encourage and bring them to full growth and full perfection. So in order to be able to fully cultivate the mind, you're going to need to be able to have awareness of the entire mind. So one of the benefits and one of the qualities, these heightened qualities that you experience in the jhanas, is that there's unification of the mind, or oneness of mind. And then there's other qualities that the Buddha is talking about here too. But I just thought I would give you that example so you see what we're talking about with these jhanas, is that these are enhanced qualities of mind that you're experiencing as you're putting together the teachings more and more, and your mind's improving and you're cultivating your mind, that there's going to be these improved qualities that you experience, and you actually need these in order to be able to get to the first, second, and third, fourth stage of enlightenment. Sometimes when people talk about the jhanas, they think you're only experiencing these qualities when you're in meditation, or they think that you can turn these qualities on and you can turn them off. But this isn't actually true. And this is for someone who hasn't actually studied the original teachings of the Buddha, that your mind is actually residing in these qualities. You can see it in the teachings of the Buddha. It's not just in meditation that you're experiencing these. It's not that you're turning these qualities on and off. It's that if your mind's in the first jhana, you're going to be experiencing those qualities all day long. If your mind is in the second jhana, you're going to be experiencing those qualities all day long. And you need that on your way to enlightenment to be able to experience these qualities, because it's going to help you to further purify the mind. So any questions here on this particular chapter, that the Buddha is teaching you that the jhanas is what essentially helps to lead to enlightenment itself, and that without these jhanas you wouldn't be able to actually experience enlightenment itself, because you need these heightened qualities. Let's see, I'm going to check if we have anything online. Okay, I don't see anything online. I don't see any questions anywhere else. So let's go to the next chapter. This is chapter 74. Is there someone who would like to read this one? Pat, you got it? Okay.
Great fruit and benefit of breathing mindfulness meditation, Anapanasati. Monks, mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation, when developed and cultivated, is of great fruit and benefit. And how, monks, is mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation developed and cultivated so that it is of great fruit and benefit? Here, monks, a monk having gone to the forest, to the foot of a tree or an empty hut, sits down, having folded his legs crosswise, straightened his body, and set up mindfulness in front of him. Just mindful, he breathes in. Mindful, he breathes out. Breathing in long, he knows, I breathe in long. Or breathing out long, he knows, I breathe out long. Breathing in short, he knows, I breathe in short. Or breathing out short, he knows, I breathe out short. He trains thus, experiencing the whole body, I will breathe in. He trains thus, experiencing the whole body, I will breathe out. He trains thus, calming the bodily sensations, I will breathe in. He trains thus, calming the bodily sensations, I will breathe out. He trains thus, experiencing joy, I will breathe in. He trains thus, experiencing joy, I will breathe out. He trains thus, experiencing peacefulness, I will breathe in. He trains thus, experiencing peacefulness, I will breathe out. He trains thus, experiencing the mental activity, I will breathe in. He trains thus, experiencing the mental activity, I will breathe out. He trains thus, Calming the mental activity, I will breathe in. He trains thus. Calming the mental activity, I will breathe out. He trains thus. Experiencing the mind, I will breathe in. He trains thus. Experiencing the mind, I will breathe out. He trains thus. Gladdening the mind, I will breathe in. He trains thus. Gladdening the mind, I will breathe out. He trains thus. Concentrating the mind, I will breathe in. He trains thus. Concentrating the mind, I will breathe out. He trains thus. Liberating the mind, I will breathe in. He trains thus. Liberating the mind, I will breathe out. He trains thus. Reflecting on impermanence, I will breathe in. He trains thus. Reflecting on impermanence, I will breathe out. He trains thus. Reflecting on fading away, I will breathe in. He trains thus. Reflecting on fading away, I will breathe out. He trains thus. Reflecting on elimination, I will breathe in. He trains thus. Reflecting on elimination, I will breathe out. He trains thus. Reflecting on letting go, I will breathe in. He trains thus. Reflecting on letting go, I will breathe out. It is, monks, when mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation is developed and cultivated in this way that it is of great fruit and benefit. When, monks, mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation has been developed and cultivated in this way, one of two fruits may be predicted. Either final knowledge, wisdom in this very life, or, if there is a residue of clinging, the state of non-returner.
Okay, thank you, Pat. What we've got here is we've got the instructions of the Buddha of how he guided people in meditation. That in order to get to enlightenment, you're going to need to meditate. There's other things besides meditation that you need, but you wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment without meditation either. And there's this primary form of meditation that the Buddha taught in addition to a few others called breathing mindfulness meditation. And this is the Pali word for that, anapanasati. Okay, so this is the way people will refer to it in the Pali language. But in English, we can just call it breathing mindfulness meditation, and we'll know what we're talking about. This is the meditation we did this morning, where you're focused on the breath, and when the mind moves off the breath, you cut that off and let it go and bring the mind back to the breath. So in the guidance that I give you in meditation, I've essentially taken what the Buddha does here, and I've summarized it in a way that makes it applicable for you to be able to practice it right away today. Here, what he's giving you is all the detail of what's really truly occurring during your meditation. It's kind of like when you were learning to brush your teeth as a child. Your parents were like, okay, little boy, little girl, put your toothpaste on the toothbrush, put the water on the toothbrush. Now move, your toothbrush back and forth slowly. You do the outside, then the inside. And they showed you all the individual steps, right? And you needed to be consciously aware of all those individual steps for a period of time. But then eventually, now maybe, you just bloop, bloop, and then you're done, right? You're able to do it really easy, very simply. You don't have to think about all the steps. So the Buddha is giving you all the steps here to understand what you need to be doing in order to prepare for meditation, and then actually during meditation itself. But you don't need to think about these when you're actually meditating. You just need to understand how to do it and then actually do it. Just like you brush your teeth now. You don't think about every little step, you just do it. And then the result is you have this wonderful teeth and fresh breath. So what the Buddha is saying is that if you practice all these steps that he's sharing, the result is that you're either going to get to enlightenment. That's what he means when he says either final knowledge. When you get to final knowledge, you've gotten to enlightenment. So he's saying if you meditate in this way, you're either going to get to enlightenment or you're going to get to this state of non-returner. What this is the third stage of enlightenment. In this stage of enlightenment, you're going to be reborn into the heavenly world. You're going to attain enlightenment in that existence and escape the whole cycle of rebirth. Remember, I shared with you the teachings of the Buddha don't have any belief in them. There is no belief, including the cycle of rebirth, including these different 5 realms, hell, animal, afflicted spirit, human realm, and the heavenly realm. You're not to believe any of these things. You can actually independently verify these. You might not have the wisdom of how to do that right now, but there is the ability for you to cultivate that wisdom to independently verify these things. Right now, you might believe you only have one life, but this isn't actually true. You're just believing it. You don't have any independently verifiable evidence of that other than the fact that right now you can't remember your past lives. But as you're training your mind and you're removing more and more of the pollution out of your mind, there's a good chance that you might actually experience observing your past lives. And if you observe your past lives, or you use any of the other methods to be able to independently verify the cycle of rebirth in these 5 realms, you'll know that this is actually true. So what the Buddha is teaching you is that by meditating in this way, you're either going to get to enlightenment, or you're going to get to enlightenment in your next life, which is in the heavenly realm. So either way, you're going to be able to get to enlightenment. So he's guiding you how to do this. So what he's doing here is he's walking you through each individual step. He's saying, okay, there's this great fruit and benefit in cultivating the mind using breathing mindfulness meditation. And he says, okay, having gone to the forest, to the foot of a tree, or an empty hut, the person sits down, right? So this is how they used to meditate, either in the forest or at the foot of a tree or in an empty hut. Nowadays, you can meditate anywhere, anytime. You don't necessarily have to do it in these exact places, but these are places that they would meditate in during the time of the Buddha, and you could surely do that now if you'd like. Then he says, okay, folding your legs crosswise and straightening up your body, which is what I taught you guys to keep your body erect. Then you set up mindfulness in front of you. This is what we're doing with the chanting, that when we're chanting, we're developing awareness of mind. That's what it means to set up mindfulness in front of you, is that you're developing some awareness of mind. You're not interested in just plopping down into meditation. And then once you've set your body erect, once you've developed this mindfulness, now you start breathing in and you start breathing out. And this is what I guided you guys during the meditation. Then what he says is, if you're breathing in long or you're breathing in short, know that you're breathing in long or you're breathing in short. Essentially what he's saying is, bring your mind to your breath. Focus the mind on the breath. That's what you would like to do, because that's the present moment, is focus your mind on the breath. The mind's going to want to be in the past, or it's going to want to be in the future, but you would like to focus it in the present moment by focusing it on the breath. So that's what he's sharing there. So now, as you're in meditation and you start experiencing the body, meaning you start noticing bodily sensations or anything like that, maybe like an itch or something like that, he's saying focus on the breath. Don't just start itching and paying attention to all these different things. When you're experiencing the body, you need to just keep focusing on the breath. Breathe in, breathe out, even when you're experiencing certain bodily sensations. If you notice bodily sensations, use the mind to just calm that down and just focus on the breath. Then, as you're doing that, you're going to notice joy and peacefulness starting to spring up in the mind. That as you're in meditation, as you're training your mind and cultivating it more and more, maybe not the first time or the second time or the third time, but as you develop your meditation more and more, you're going to notice this joy and this peacefulness coming into the mind more and more. But when you notice that, keep focusing on the breath. Sometimes what people do is they indulge in that joy, or they indulge in that peacefulness. What you would like to do is just observe it and notice, the mind's joyful. The mind's peaceful. But let me just keep bringing the mind back to the breath. Don't indulge in that. Then, as you're experiencing mental activity, meaning you're having thoughts and ideas coming through your mind, you would like to calm that mental activity. And the Buddha teaches you in other discourses to cut that off and let it go. Right? So calm that mental activity by just bringing the mind back to the breath. Don't allow the mind to sit there and dwell in those thoughts. Just keep bringing the mind back to the breath. Then, experiencing the mind, you're starting to experience the mind starting to become gladdened, meaning there's starting to be this joy starting to come up in the mind. There's this concentration, this focus, this clarity. There's this liberation, this freedom of mind, where the mind's starting to get free of these strong feelings. Then you can start understanding that anything that's going through the mind is impermanent. This is the reflection on impermanence. That if you have a thought, understand that that's impermanent. Or if you hear a sound in meditation, like maybe a car going by, just understand that's impermanent. Anything that's going on in the world around you, it's all impermanent. The problem that the mind's experiencing in the unenlightened state is it craves permanence. It's wanting things to be permanent. So if you're meditating and it's fairly quiet, and you hear that baby crying next door, You might be frustrated or agitated. That's because you're craving that permanent silence where it's not going to be that way. When you're meditating, you're going to hear sounds occasionally. You can't be in an environment where it's perfectly quiet every single time you're meditating. So when you're meditating and you're experiencing thoughts or sounds or various things, just remember, these things are all impermanent, and don't allow the mind to be affected by them. Keep bringing your mind back to the breath. That's what he keeps saying. Every single thing that's happening, he keeps saying, breathe in and breathe out. Keep focusing on the breath. No matter what's happening in your meditation, keep focusing on the breath, right? Reflecting on fading away. These feelings are going to start fading away. Reflecting on elimination, that you're eliminating these defilements. You're eliminating these discontent feelings. Reflecting on letting go, letting go, letting go. And I guided you in this during the meditation. Just keep focusing on the breath. The goal of this meditation isn't to eliminate your thoughts. No matter how enlightened you are, you're not going to eliminate your thoughts. Sometimes people think, based on the guidance and the meditation, that the goal is to eliminate your thoughts. But the goal is actually to notice your thoughts sooner and sooner, and to cut them off and let them go easier and easier. So in the unenlightened state, you will have a bombardment of thoughts. It'll be like thought. Or you might have a thought. You might indulge in that thought for a period of time, and then 2 or 3 minutes down the road, you're like, oh yeah, that's right, I'm meditating. Let me bring my mind back to the breath, right? So that's what you'll experience in the unenlightened state, because the mind's undisciplined, it's untrained, it's uncontrolled. By the time you get to enlightenment, you'll still have thoughts. And when you have a thought, you'll notice it right away, and you'll cut it off and let it go and bring the mind back to the breath. Then there's going to be this quietness and this stillness in between your thoughts. Maybe 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, you'll have this stillness and this quietness in your mind. And then you're going to have another thought. Even when you're enlightened, you're going to have a thought, but you'll notice it and you'll cut it off and let it go, and you'll bring your mind right back to your breath. So that's what the Buddha is guiding you to be able to do, is do this letting go of letting go, letting go, letting go. So if 20, 30, 50 times during your meditation, you had to let go, let go, let go, this is really good for your mind, because in day-to-day life, you have trouble letting go. That's why your mind gets angry and sad and frustrated. Think back to that boyfriend or girlfriend that you were with, that you guys were together. And when you guys were together, everything you thought was wonderful. When you guys first got together, there was so much pleasure. But then over time, you started having expectations of them. They started having expectations of you. This relationship became discontent. You became frustrated and agitated with each other. And then you guys broke up. And when you guys first broke up, you might have felt lonely. You might have felt bored. You might have missed this person. You might have been angry or frustrated because your mind was holding on. But at some point, you decided to let go. You let go. And you were like, you know what? If they would like to be with someone else, so be it. Or if they'd like to move across town, so be it. Right? Or if they would like to do something else, so be it. And your mind let go. And when you let go of that person, that's where you got your peacefulness back. That's where you got your joy back. So what the mind is doing in the unenlightened state is it's holding on. It doesn't want to let go. So this meditation is training your mind to let go, let go, let go. So that now in day-to-day life, you can easily let go. And then eventually you'll get to the point where you don't grab on to begin with and want these things to be permanent, because you already understand they are impermanent. So that's what this meditation is doing for you. And the Buddha is basically getting to this point where he's saying, hey, if you develop meditation in this way and you cultivate the mind in this way, it's of great fruit and benefit, because it's going to lead to your enlightenment or the third stage of enlightenment, either way. Right? So you're going to experience this peace and joy. So let me know what questions you guys have here. This is the Buddha's guidance on breathing mindfulness meditation and why it's important to practice this. Looks like Roxanne has a question. So if you'd like to go ahead, Roxanne.
Yeah, in the last section of that list, he's talking a lot about reflection. Mm-hmm. And I'm just wondering, within meditation, reflecting on impermanence, reflecting on fading away, reflecting on elimination, reflecting on letting go. So would you spend time in meditation on reflection?
So when you're meditating and you have that thought, initially, maybe the first few months, you might have to remind yourself, it's impermanent, let it go. Right? You might have to tell the mind that in your meditation, and you let it go, right? And this will help you to train your mind to let go and come back to the breath. But ultimately, you're not going to need to sit there and think about these things during meditation. Your mind will just do it. That you'll know that when that thought comes up, you can just let it go. It's just like the brushing of the teeth, that initially we had to think about every little stroke that we did because we had to pay a lot of attention to it to learn how to do it. But then once we learned how to do it, now we just do it. We don't think about each individual stroke. So it's the same kind of thing that you might use something like this initially, that you might have to remind yourself during meditation, it's impermanent, let it go, let it go, let it go. But then after a few months, you won't need that anymore, that your mind will just be able to do it, where you'll be able to let go without thinking about it.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, let me see. It looks like we have another question here on Facebook. This is from Chris. Teacher David, how does a person gladden the mind in meditation? This is where you need to brighten up the mind. So if you're in meditation and you're noticing you feel dull and lethargic, or you feel irritable or grumpy, you would like to apply right effort to brighten up the mind and lift up the mind. And that's what's going to gladden the mind. Okay. All right. I'm not seeing any other questions anywhere. So let's do one more chapter, and then we'll just call it a day here. This is chapter 75. Is there someone who would like to read this one? Nobody? Okay, yeah, if you'd like to read, go ahead, Pat. Sometimes the unenlightened mind is shy. You don't want to be perceived by other people a certain way. This is the unenlightened mind. But the way you get over that is you put your mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in, and you show it that it's okay, that you can do things like this. So if you're ever in a situation where you feel shy, you should do just the opposite, because the mind's going to want to push it away. You would actually like to put the mind in that situation and train it to be comfortable in that situation, and then you can get over your shyness. Go ahead.
Breathing mindfulness meditation, an excellent and peaceful dwelling. The Buddha commented on the incidences of monks dying through suicide by themselves or by encouraging and assisting others to do so. On this occasion, the perfectly enlightened one had given them the discourses of Anapanasati, breathing mindfulness meditation. Monks, this concentration by mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation, when developed and cultivated, is peaceful and superb, an excellent and peaceful dwelling, and it dissolves and extinguishes right on the spot evil, unwholesome states whenever they arise. Just as monks in the last month of the hot season, when a mass of dust and dirt has swirled up, a great rain, cloud out of season disperses it and extinguishes it on the spot. So too, concentration by mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation, when developed and cultivated, is peaceful and superb, an excellent and peaceful dwelling, and it dissolves and extinguishes on the spot evil, unwholesome states whenever they arise. And how is this so?
This is what we just read, Pat. We don't have to read all of that. Oh, I shortened it up anyway. So we don't have to read all of that, but you can come right down here. This is all, what he's basically saying is getting to meditation, and then now you can just finish it up here.
It is in this way, monks, that concentration by mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation, is developed and cultivated so that it is peaceful and superb, an excellent and peaceful dwelling, and it dissolves and extinguishes on the spot evil, unwholesome states whenever they arise.
Okay, thank you, sir. So what the Buddha is doing here is his students had come to him and had advised him that some of his students were committing suicide and other students were assisting people to commit suicide, right? So the Buddha had thousands and thousands and thousands of students, and these people choosing to commit suicide, that's not something that the Buddha teaches. It's very unwise to commit suicide. It's not going to lead to anything beneficial. Oftentimes when people are experiencing painful feelings in their mind, they think the way out is to kill themselves, but they don't don't realize this actually makes the problem worse. Because if you think you only have one life and you're experiencing painful feelings, you might think the way to solve this is to kill yourself. But if you understand that by killing yourself, you're not going to only have one life, you're going to be reborn into another life. And now there's the potential that you could be reborn into the lower realms of hell, animal, or afflicted spirits. These aren't permanent existences in those lower realms. Those beings will ultimately make their way back to the human realm or the heavenly realm. But going back down to the lower realms isn't ideal. That's where you're going to have difficulties and struggles. Living in this human realm, this is the ideal existence to be able to get to enlightenment, because you can fully cultivate your mind. Where a being in hell, animal realm, or afflicted spirits, they can't cultivate their mind to the level of getting to enlightenment. They have to be able to get to the human realm or the heavenly realm to be able to ultimately cultivate the mind enough to get to enlightenment. So it would be unwise to allow this human existence to go to waste by killing yourself. So what the Buddha is teaching here is that for those people who are having those painful feelings and having those evil, unwholesome states arise in their mind, he's saying the way to solve that is to practice breathing mindfulness meditation. Because he's saying whatever arises, this breathing mindfulness meditation will eliminate it right on the spot. So let's just say you're having some jealousy, that you're jealous of your friends or family, and that's an evil state that's coming into your mind. You can sit down and do breathing mindfulness meditation and cut that off and let it go and get that out of the mind. Or say you're having any other unwholesome state that's coming into your mind. You can use breathing mindfulness meditation to eliminate it. Now, if you're only doing this breathing mindfulness meditation once a year, you're not going to be able to eliminate it so easily. But if you consistently build up your breathing mindfulness meditation, where maybe 2 or 3 times a day, you're consistently meditating, and you would like to build up to 30 minutes per session or more. And right now, that might sound like a lot for you, because there might be certain things that you're doing in your life that are unbeneficial. Maybe you're spending a lot of time on your phone, searching social media. Maybe you're attached to it. You can't even put it down to participate in any one particular thing. And you find that you're holding on to your phone a lot. And maybe you're looking at social media a lot. Maybe you're looking at YouTube a lot, or some of these other things. You would like to be able to do this in moderation, where you can use those things occasionally, but you're not doing it excessively. And when you start cleaning up your life and you're not holding on to these things so much, you'll be able to see that you have more time in your life to actually cultivate your mind and develop wisdom to be able to move your life forward. But if you always have your mind in the phone, you're not going to have the time you need to be able to cultivate your mind, to learn wisdom and cultivate your mind through meditation and things like this. So if you can start clearing out certain parts of your life where you're maybe doing things that aren't really beneficial, you can start doing things like meditation and cultivating wisdom and coming to the temple and reading books about cultivating your mind and training your mind. And this is where the peace and the joy is going to come. Having your mind attached to social media or to your phone isn't actually going to produce peace and joy. Anything that you experience there is only temporary. You're going to be happy while you're doing it, but then when you're not doing it, you're going to be sad or frustrated. So you would like to get to the point where you can set some things aside, clear out your life a little bit, and start to meditate on a consistent, ongoing basis. And as you do so, whenever you get to the point where you have something that comes into your mind that you don't particularly care for, you can sit down and meditate. And because you've been cultivating your mind, you can eliminate it on the spot. And that's what the Buddha is saying here with this analogy, is he's saying, just like in the last month of the hot season, when a mass of dust and dirt has swirled up and a great rain cloud out of season disperses it and extinguishes all that dust on the spot, so too concentration by mindfulness of breathing, when developed and cultivated, is peaceful and superb. It's an excellent and peaceful dwelling. It dissolves and extinguishes on the spot evil, unwholesome states when they arise. Right? So one of the things the Buddha teaches about meditation is he says, if you don't meditate, you're going to regret it later. Right? So when your mind's angry or sad or frustrated or feeling guilt or shame or fear, you're going to regret having not meditated. Whereas if you can consistently meditate and build up your practice, you're going to have a tool that now when there's something in your mind that you don't particularly care for and you're not interested in that guilt and shame or that stress and anxiety being in your mind, you'll have a tool of how to eliminate it. Right now, if you're not meditating, you don't have that tool. You don't have that ability. When you have stress and anxiety, you've just got to deal with it. You've just got to make your way through it. And it feels like you're dragging your feet through the mud sometimes when these emotions are in your mind. But if you develop and cultivate your mind with meditation, you'll have a tool to actually help you through this, and you can eliminate it on the spot. And then eventually, if you train your mind enough, you'll never have stress come up in your mind. You'll never have anxiety. You'll never have these feelings. That's when the mind gets to enlightenment. You'll see that your mind never experiences any of those strong feelings. And it can start with developing this meditation practice. And there's other aspects of your practice that you need to develop as well, but meditation is a very important part of that practice. So you guys have any questions on this? Let me see. Okay, I don't see any questions anywhere. All right. So what I'll do then is just in class here by thanking all of you guys for joining. Thank you for coming to the temple. Thank you for considering that today is a day that you're interested in learning the teachings of the Buddha, because as you learn and you practice, it's the very best thing you could do for yourself is learn these teachings and train your own mind and get to more peace and more joy. It's the very best thing you could do for the people around you, because the more peaceful, more loving, and more kind that you are, that's the less and less harm and hostility that other people have to deal with coming from you. And then it's really wonderful for all of humanity, because humanity becomes a more and more peaceful place as each individual is choosing to be more peaceful and loving and kind. So thank you for your dedication and your interest to actually learning and practicing these teachings. If you'd like to learn more, tomorrow on our group learning program, I'm going to be teaching in a more traditional way, where I'll be teaching for 15, 20, 30 minutes, opening up for questions, teaching more, opening up for questions. I'm going to be sharing what's called the 5 hindrances and the 7 factors of enlightenment. The 5 hindrances are the 5 things that are going to hinder you from getting to enlightenment. So I'm going to be teaching that tomorrow here at the temple at 9 a.m. and then I'll be teaching it at home at 9 p.m. And then next Sunday, I'm going to be starting the group learning program from the very beginning. So if you're interested in learning the path to enlightenment, I would suggest that you start with the first book of the book series. It's volume 1. And as I mentioned, you can get it from our website. You can print it, you can get it here, or you can get it on Amazon, any of those ways. In the group learning program, I'll be gradually walking you through chapter by chapter every single week. So thank you all for joining, and perhaps we'll see you guys in one of these future classes. Be well. We'll see you next time. Sawadee Cup, Sawadee Cup, Sawadee Cup. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.